So we are going to start discussing The Hate U Give. So Glynis and Professor McCorrell, can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Go ahead, Glynis, you can go first. You're muted, honey.
No, I know you. I'm still trying to work that out. So, I want to talk about this book not from the perspective of being a grad student, but when I first came across it, which was earlier this year in my senior seminar at VCU, I was familiar with the movie coming out and everything. And in my senior seminar, it was just on fiction, contemporary fiction. And I remember seeing this book on the list and immediately thinking, why are we reading this? And that's important to note because when I saw the title, as I had seen before, that's why I had no interest going to the movie, things like that. But it was part of my class, so I had to read it. Well, I think before I got to the middle of the first chapter, I was in tears. And getting through the book itself, it's what I would call a sleeper. You just don't see it.
You just muted yourself again, Glynis.
I'm sorry, my finger went to the little button. I apologize. I did that in class all the time. You don't see coming the connections. For example, one of the main characters, Khalil, is the same name as one of my grandsons. And spoiler alert, you know, Khalil's not going to make it with us to the end. So as I read through it, what I realized is fiction, which I don't read fiction, but what I understood was that the fiction was basically, it's not really fiction, it's reflecting life. And doing a deeper analysis after we finished it and things like that, understanding that the way I responded to the title, to thinking what it was about was actually internalized racism. Because my feelings were what I thought a thug was. I did not know this was an acronym. I didn't. And the way Angie Thomas breaks it down as far as what it means and where it comes from, why Star's father is living in this neighborhood, it basically changed my whole perspective on reading and books. And I've been a lifelong reader. So what I understand is that for all that I thought I knew and I think I know and I'm doing, I'm still very much in a place where I have a lot of work to do internally for those little spots that you miss because you're so big on looking at the big picture. Sometimes you forget to look at the little things about yourself. One of the things I remember very acutely was that in class, when we had to discuss every single book, we had 10 of them. When we had to discuss this book, we had 12 people. We had comments from 3, and you know who one of them was. Whereas the other books we had over the semester, there was a lot more engagement. And I remember being really angry about that. So much so that at the end of the semester, I talked with my professor about it. It's a difficult thing to talk about police brutality, to talk about poverty, to talk about, oh, well, yeah, he must have been a drug dealer, the character Khalil, because that's why the police shot him. And you really start to see the story. Those are hard things to talk about, but they're necessary in order to move to the next place. I think it's a book that definitely is, it left on a hopeful note. I'm not saying it was the best, but it was hopeful because Star evolves. And to see that was really a thing of beauty. It was basically taking a really negative situation that pretty much every person, okay, in marginalized oppressed communities, they deal with all the time. She took that and turned it into something where she can actually be a force in her community. And that's what I think we should ultimately strive for wherever we are. You know, when people are in these oppressed environments, if they're constantly told this is all there is and this is all you are, but to be able to take that and turn it into something that works, something that is transformative, that's the liberation that Professor Marin was talking about, that we take, but that's what Black people do. We make good out of seemingly where there's nothing good, we take something out of it and we make something powerful out of it.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add that I was introduced to this book at another institution where I taught. They have a first year reading experience program. And every year, all the first year students read a common book. The university buys the book, sends it out to all the first year students. They all read it. And then for convocation, there's a speaker that relates to that book. If we can't afford the actual author because they're kind of pricey, then there's something else related to that book. And then all faculty across the entire campus are encouraged to find ways to incorporate the book. And then there's a variety of themed events the entire academic year around that book. And so that's how I was introduced to the book. I facilitated first year reading every year that I was at that institution, and this was one of the books. The second thing I want to say is that there's a lot of me and Star, or Star and me. I was the Black middle class girl who would go to the predominantly Black neighborhoods and felt like a fish out of water, and then go back to my predominantly white middle class neighborhood. And then in college, I witnessed a friend get shot by the police. And so there's a lot about Star that I could relate to in the story. And what I like, Glenn touched on this, is that it's a fictional, I think Angie Thomas, it's fiction, but it's real. It's based on a real story. And can I, Angelique, read a little part from the book? Okay, so I just wanted to read this because Glenda says it ends on a hopeful note. And I think it does, and it gives you something to think about. And maybe this will give people like interest in going to read the book. I'm sorry, Angelique, I did not watch the movie, so I can't speak to the movie, but let me just read this.
Totally fine.
Once upon a time, there was a hazel-eyed boy with dimples. I called him Khalil. The world called him a thug. He lived, but not nearly long enough, and for the rest of my life, I'll remember how he died. Fairy tale? No. But I'm not giving up on a better ending. It would be easy to quit if it was just about me, Khalil, that night, and that cop. So this isn't a spoiler alert, but Star witness, for those of you who haven't read the book, Star witnesses him getting shot, and then she has to testify. It's about way more than that, though. It's about Seven, Sakani, Kenya, Devante. It's also about Oscar, Iana, Trayvon, Rakia, Michael, Eric, Tamir, John, Ezel, Sandra, Freddie, Alton, Philando. You can add your own names to the end of that list. It's even about that little boy in 1955 who nobody recognized at first, Emmett. The messed up part, there are so many more. Yet I think it'll change one day. How? I don't know. When? I definitely don't know. Why? Because there will always be someone ready to fight. And maybe it's my turn. This is Star speaking. Others are fighting too, even in the garden, where sometimes it feels like there's not a lot worth fighting for. People are realizing and shouting and marching and demanding. They're not forgetting. I think that's the most important part. Khalil, I'll never forget. I'll never give up. I'll never be quiet. I promise. I think the book also gives a good explanation as to why people are in the streets protesting and why it never ends. I think people still want to believe that we live in a post-racist society. And I think that the hate you give probably helps explain why we don't, and why people are still protesting, and why there's still a lot of social movement towards change towards anti-racism.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. There were other questions, but I think ending this resource with that quote is absolutely perfect. So thank you both. So the first question that we got in was related to the hate you give. And this is for anyone on the panel, not just folks who were highlighted to share about it today, but for those of you who both read the book and saw the film. Do you have any thoughts about the film adaptation with regard to the plot, the characters, and the messages?
I didn't see the film. I do understand from people who did that one character, Devontae, was not in the film. And although I didn't see it, knowing what I read of the book, I'd be really interested to see how that went, because he was a really integral part. He wasn't a main character, but he was integral. So I'd be interested in knowing how that story was basically told without him playing the role that he did.
Yeah, sorry, I had the opportunity to go watch the movie actually with students, and then being a mom, something came up, as always happens. So I didn't get to watch the movie. But I've heard that, yeah, it's there's some pieces. I mean, anytime a book is adapted to a movie, there's things that are missing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I also heard about it. So I didn't get to see the film, but some of my friends who also study the similar topic, they said that the ending kind of was off-putting to them compared to the book, and this apparently is because the film gave the impression that that this was one of those things where it's like it's both sides are doing the bad equally, you know, and that was the problem for them at least. And they said something about it giving the impression that gang violence was on the same level as police brutality, which is dangerous in this situation because it's a slippery slope, you know, to turn into a situation where people will turn this whole thing into black on black crime argument. And not like white on white crime or any other group on each other crime. So that's the only critique that I've heard about the film versus the book was that ending.